I would rather be a million in debt than stay married to a billionaire female COO. But my mother-in-law hung up her daughter and beat her up, and even threatened not to remarry me, and just pretended that she had never given birth to this daughter, just because my marriage with him was just a transaction. 3 years ago, my mother was seriously ill and hospitalized. The high medical expenses made the already poor family even worse. I had no choice but to embezzle public funds to treat my mother. The operation was very successful, and my mother was finally discharged from the hospital in good health, but my embezzlement of public funds was exposed. Just when I was desperate, the company's legal department suddenly withdrew the lawsuit, claiming that everything was a misunderstanding and no longer held me responsible. I walked out of the detention center in a daze, and I really couldn't understand why the company withdrew the lawsuit. It was not until when New Ann, the vice president of the company, came to me that I realized that it should be the trouble that the beautiful woman in front of me solved for me. Then he took out a contract from his bag and said, "I want to make a deal with you now. As long as you agree to marry me for 3 years, I will not only let the legal department withdraw the lawsuit, but also help you repay all your debts." I frowned and took the contract and took a few simple glances. "You married me to wait for her to come back." When talking about her, when New and showed a charming smile, "You are right. But my parents don't like her very much and don't want me to be with her, so they forced me to get married this year, otherwise they would confiscate all my shares and property. Your task is to be a full-time wife at home and take care of our daily life. And you must not have any improper thoughts about me, but we are only nominal husband and wife. In addition, I also checked your family background. Your mother needs a lot of nutritional supplements after being discharged from the hospital. I can satisfy you, but once you and I get married, as long as you file for divorce within 3 years, you have to compensate me for million." I nodded in agreement. "But I don't think it is my honor to marry a beauty like New Ann. On the contrary, I still have a little disgust in my heart, but it is much better than going to jail. In the past 3 years, New Ann has taken great care of my parents and would take time to visit them during the holidays. But just 2 months before the 3 years, I filed for divorce." New Ann frowned, her face full of confusion. "You have thought about it. Now you file for divorce, but you have to compensate me for million." I smiled and nodded. "Let's get a divorce. It would be bad if we wait for him to come back before getting a divorce. Thank you for taking care of me for the past 3 years. I will pay back the 4 million within a year. Will you continue to embezzle public funds? I admit that you have some ability, but it is absolutely impossible to make 4 million a year. You have to think it over. If you can't pay it back within a year, I will send you to jail." New Ann's tone was a bit dangerous because she didn't want a divorce at all now. 3 years have made her very dependent on me. But I was still unmoved and nodded again. "Do you have time today? Let's go through the divorce procedures." New Ann was proud and he wouldn't say much. In less than half an hour, the two walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. New Ann didn't even look at me and drove away alone and fervently while I stood there with a bitter face, not knowing where to go. After 3 years of getting along, I had become accustomed to New Ann's presence. At the same time, New Ann's car had not driven 200 meters when the phone directly asked him to park the car on the side of the road. He took a few deep breaths before answering the phone. A familiar yet unfamiliar voice came from the other end. New Ann, why did he answer the phone last night? I wanted to be the first to tell you that I will be able to return to China next month. But when I finished speaking, it was him who answered. I know. Have you already? New Ann was slightly stunned, and then she suddenly realized why she would rather bear a debt of 4 million and resolutely choose to divorce. "What are Lynn Song you thinking about? I left my phone on the first floor last night. If there is nothing else, I will hang up." At the moment when New Ann hung up the phone, a woman's panting sound came from the phone. But she was not very angry. She just wondered if her head was caught by the door when she was a child, and she actually liked such a dissolute man. Then she turned her head and looked at the man squatting at the door of the Civil Affairs Bureau smoking. New Ann muttered softly, "So he can smoke now." At this time, he was no longer in the mood to go to work. He drove straight to his parents' house. As soon as he entered the house, he cried to his mother, "Mom, Han Kian and I are divorced." But she did not get any comfort from her mother. Li Jinhe, who came from the army, was very ruthless. He slapped the table with his palm and shouted angrily, "Little Wen Yuan, you really don't know what's good for you. I won't say you've been bullying Han Qian, but how can you divorce? In the past 3 years, your work has been going smoothly. Who has been silently helping you behind the scenes? Do you think you really sleepwalk to handle your work? Which of your jobs was not decided by Han Qian calling your dad in the middle of the night to discuss what to give you? And who took care of your eating, drinking, and defecating? The breakfast was prepared for you, the bath water was prepared for you, and even your underwear was washed by Han Qian. Now you say you are divorced from Han Qian. Han Qian is really unlucky to have met a thing like you. When Nguyen felt a little uncomfortable after being scolded, so she puffed out her chest to refute for herself, "Am I your biological child? I tell you, the reason why Qian and I filed for divorce is because your daughter was abandoned. You are not a docile person. You were not happy immediately, but you asked Han Qian how his daughter was worthy of you, a rabbit. But before the call was made, it was taken away by Li Jinhe. You still have the nerve to call Han Qian. You will say that he will say something warm? You have another man in your heart. Don't think that I don't know. Isn't he waiting for Lin Lin to return to China? But I warn you, if you dare to be with that bastard of the Lin family, I will take back all your shares. Is it you and the little rabbit of the Lin family who will kick you away?" Hearing this, Wen Yu Anne subconsciously cast a look of help at her father, but she never thought that what responded to him was her father's stern eyes. "Did you tell Han Qian that Lin Zongheng was coming back?" "Wen Yu Anne, I understand men. Han Qian is a responsible man. On the other hand, Lin Zongheng is not honest at first glance. Do you think he can control himself abroad? Your man, this is the same position as your mother, and I will never agree to you and Lin Zongheng being together." When Niu Anne raised her head and looked at her parents with angry eyes, "It's his daughter now. It's not that I don't want her. Yesterday, Lin Zongheng did call me and said he was going back to China and wanted to marry me, but Han Xian answered the phone. Today, he asked for a divorce. He was the one who asked for the divorce. You should question him." But in the face of Wen Niu Anne's rebuttal, Li Jin, he looked at his daughter with a sneer in his eyes. "Don't think I don't know about your tricks before. Since you will go home after the divorce, I will sell your house at half price tomorrow. If you dare to go home after 9 o'clock in the evening, I will break your legs. And if you want to fall in love in the future, I don't object to being with street beggars, but you can't be with Lin Zongheng. I will go to Han Qian now to ask him why he wants a divorce." At the same time, the mobile phone in my pocket, which was wandering around on the road, suddenly rang. Seeing the call from my mother-in-law, sweat instantly flowed from my forehead, and I answered the phone, rambling lie. "Hello, hello, you little bastard. Have I smiled at you too much? Say hello again and I will call the army, you bastard." Mom, I was wrong. I will never dare to do it again." "Now that's good. Let's have lunch together. I want to ask you about your relationship with Wen Yuan. If you don't come, you're dead. I would rather be in debt of millions than divorce the female CEO worth hundreds of billions." That the mother-in-law hung up her daughter and beat her. She even threatened not to remarry me and pretend that she had never given birth to this daughter. She also called me in person to invite me to have lunch together at noon. 10 minutes later, I rushed to the designated restaurant. As soon as I entered the private room, I saw my mother-in-law was about to make a phone call. "What are you looking for me in such a hurry about?" Li Jinhe was satisfied when he saw his son-in-law panting. He nodded and said, "Not bad. Even if you are divorced, you still take me, your mother-in-law, seriously. Now tell me why you want to divorce. Think about it before answering me. I might really beat you to death." I was embarrassed and stood there scratching my head. Finally, I mustered up the courage to make up a reason. "Mom, I can't do it. I can't give Wen Nguyen happiness." Li Jin, he looked at me with a sneer on his face and wanted to take me to the hospital for examination on the spot. "I definitely can't go to this hospital. If Li Jin, he knew that I lied to her, I would have to pretend to be miserable even if I didn't die. It seems that I can only tell the truth honestly. I took a deep breath and whispered, my marriage with Wen Yu and is a transaction. At the beginning, my mother was seriously ill and urgently needed 400,000 yuan for surgery. There was no other way. I could only make mistakes. I asked Wen Yuan to save me, and our marriage was to deal with you two elders. Now the contract time is up, and I can't delay Wen Yuan's youth. There is no way. I can only explain part of the truth, but when I explained it, I took all the responsibility on myself, and I didn't say that Wen Yuan had someone else outside. But a shrewd person like Li Jin, he actually knew everything a long time ago. He cares most about a person's character, and the person in front of him is really beautiful. He also wants to fight for another marriage agreement for his daughter. Then I can think you have been in love for 3 years. Wen Yuan does have many shortcomings. She is obviously very sloppy, but she thinks she has my sophobia and has no life skills. Except for her academic qualifications, appearance, and money, she is useless. But in 3 years of getting along, even a dog should have feelings. Of course, I'm not saying you are a dog. I'm talking about Wen Yuan. This mother-in-law is really tough. A female president worth hundreds of billions is actually compared to a dog. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and shook my head cautiously. Mom, you also know my background. If it weren't for the fact that I have a handle in Wen Yuan's hand, he would never look at me straight in the eye in his life. Marriage is about matching up. Even if I like Wen Yuan, it's useless. Wen Yuan already has someone else in her heart. You are talking about that little bastard from the Lin family, right? Isn't he just interested in the shares in Wen Yuan's hands? Only idiots like Wen Yuan like to scold me. You said you didn't tell me in advance that you were getting a divorce. Now Lin Zongheng is going back to China, and that idiot Wen Yuan is going to throw himself into the fire. Poor one's hard work will be given away in vain. I really regretted it at the beginning. Why didn't I give birth to a mother-in-law with a penis? This made me feel so embarrassed. I couldn't nod or shake my head. I could only stay where I was and bow my head in silence. Fortunately, my mother-in-law didn't make it too difficult for me. She took out a stack of banknotes from her bag and threw them to me. Divorce is divorce. I, Li Jinhe, am not such a conservative person. After all, you have called me for 3 years, so you are half my son. You can spend this money first. Don't refuse, otherwise I will let the army break you up. I also know that I have to pay for others, and this is not a small amount, but I really dare not refuse this money. I have experienced the toughness of my mother-in-law for many years. During the meal, my mother-in-law wanted to know that I didn't have a job for the time being, and she suggested that I go to work in the group and said that she would arrange a planning department manager for me. But I smiled bitterly and shook my head to refute. Because when Nguyen also works there since we are divorced, we have to keep our distance. Besides, Lin Zongheng is about to return to China, and I don't want to see Wen Nguyen and her together. The mother-in-law's expression was a little disappointed, and she sighed softly. You used all the pride in your bones on us, but you didn't give Wen Nguyen a bit. You are an ungrateful wolf. He foolishly thought that he taught you your ability. Since you insist on doing so, I won't force you. Han Pian, are you 25 years old this year? I was confused. Why did you suddenly mention age? Then I smiled and nodded. Yes, I am 25 this year. 25 is still young. Don't be anxious to get married. If you meet a girl you like, tell Mom that if soft tactics don't work, we'll use money to kill him. If that doesn't work, I'll bring troops over. Mom, I won't fall in love in the short term. I'll solve the current problems first, then make money to buy a house, and then consider love. Mom, you should go play Mahjong. This is Xiao Yi's fourth call. While he was talking, Li Jin, his phone kept ringing. Li Jin, he answered the call and started to curse. Hurry, hurry. On the other hand, when Wen Yuan was already in a state of collapse, her house was sold by Li Jinhe, and he was also required to go home to live. In a bad mood, Wen Yuan called Lin Zongheng, hoping to get some comfort from him, but Lin Zongheng asked, "Who is that man? Why did he answer the phone?" Wen Yuan hung up the phone angrily, feeling wrong. Not only did she not get comfort, but she was suspected. At this moment, he was thinking seriously in his heart that he didn't seem to like Lin Zongheng that much, but he just regarded him as an object of worship when he was a child. In fact, 3 years had already diluted everything. When she and Han Qian just got married, they would talk on the phone until late at night at first, and as time passed, it slowly shortened to more than 10 minutes. In the end, they would hang up the phone because Han Qian called for dinner. Han Qian silently accompanied him for 3 years, washing clothes and cooking for him during the day, and handling work for him until late at night. At the most uncomfortable time of each month, he would get up early to cook a bowl of warm palace soup and would prepare ginger and wolfberry water for him in a thermos cup and bring it to the company. In an instant, when Miu An was confused, in his heart, Lin Zongheng's figure became more and more blurred, while Han Qian's appearance became clearer and clearer. However, he was too proud to accept this because he was dumped by Han and he did not allow it. In this situation, he still missed this man in his mind and felt about to collapse. Then he ran out with the car keys and rushed all the way to the door of the bar. When New An looked at this strange place, he had never been to a bar before and was very resistant to such places. But at this moment, he needed to find that he had just sat down and drank one glass of red wine after another, but the more he drank, the angrier he became. In his mind, he could not help but think that it was not him who opened it. Why was it so ugly? And he raised his head and thought about the other party. At the same time, another man came up to chat with him. "Hello, beautiful girl, can you give me a chance to buy you a drink?" "Get out of here, I advise you to have a drink." When New An couldn't remember how many people came up to chat with him, he had driven away the previous ones, but the man in front of him was not so gentlemanly. He wanted to take Wen Yuan away by force. When New An frowned and dodged, picked up his phone and was about to leave. But how could this young man in front of him let a delicate flower leave? He opened his arms to stop Wen New An and looked me up and down with a lewd look in his eyes. "It's meaningless for me to drink alone, and my sister is so beautiful you don't mind your brother a little bit, right?" But when Mu An turned out to pour the wine in the glass directly over, the young man, who had completely lost face, stopped pretending, gritted his teeth and cursed a bitch, raised his hand and was about to use violence. But before his hand fell, his wrist was held by a little fat man. The fat man opened his mouth and closed. "Jiang Hao Wei. You can't touch everyone, you know." The little fat man pushed Zhang Hao Wei aside, then turned his head and was very respectful to Wen Yu An's sister-in-law. "How did you get here?" At this time, Wen Yu An, who was already drunk and had a blurry look in her eyes, tilted her head and looked at the little fat man Han Qian's younger brother curiously. "The sworn brother can just be called Ma Zin. Sister-in-law, it's not safe for you to come here alone. I just called brother Qian and he should be here soon." When Miu En heard that Han Qian was coming, he looked flustered and nervous and was about to leave the bar rambling lie. Why is it that the more she doesn't want to see him, the more she can't get away from him? She doesn't want that guy to see him in such a mess. Ma Zin has been keeping a distance from her, following her, not going over to support her, and not allowing other men to get close. When Miu An was about to stumble out of the bar, she was suddenly hugged by someone like a princess. Seeing this, Ma Zin smiled and laughed, and the people around her were all excited. The people who were making trouble also knew that there was no chance because the men were already here. My face was filled with anger, and I stared at Wen Yu An with my eyes, which seemed to be spitting out sparks. "Wen Yu An, you actually dared to come to a place like this to drink. If it weren't for Ma Zin today, have you ever thought about the consequences? Covering your face is useless without you. This is the first time I have blamed Wen Yuan in 3 years. I really can't imagine what kind of scene Wen Yuan would have encountered if it weren't for Ma Xingzai today." When I thought of that scene, I couldn't help but feel a surge of fear in my heart. Looking at Wen Yuan, who was covering her face in my arms, I breathed a sigh of relief and was too lazy to say anything else. I pulled him and turned to leave the hotel. But as soon as I walked out of the bar, Wen Yuan vomited all over me when she saw the wind. At this moment, I was really going to collapse. I gritted my teeth and said, "I really should send you to my mother to let her know that you came out to get drunk right after your divorce." When Mu An looked at me in a daze with a face full of grievances, "You have dumped me. That's no longer your mother, but my mother." When Mu An hid in my arms like a child who had made a mistake, Not long after, I heard Wen Yu An's choking voice. Han Kaiyan, I have no home anymore. You don't want me anymore. My mother sold my house again. At this moment, my heart couldn't help but tighten. I wanted to tell her loudly that you still have me, but the words on my lips didn't come out for a long time. After returning to the rental house, I helped Wen Yu and change into a set of my pajamas and then gave my bed to her. I slept on the sofa all night and I was so sore all over my body. It was still dark, and Wen Yu An's phone was still ringing. As soon as I picked up the phone to answer it, Li Jinhe's lion roar came from the other side, which roughly meant that Wen Yu An would be hung up and beaten, and if she was driven out of the country to find Lin Zongheng, the mother-daughter relationship would be severed. It was not until Li Jinhe's roar ended that I tremblingly opened my mouth. Mom, I am Han Qian. Wen Yu An is with me. As soon as the voice fell, the phone was hung up directly. I looked at my phone in confusion, and soon I received a text message. Lao Wen and I went out to travel. I feel relieved that Wen Yu An is with you. Don't call me if you have nothing to do, otherwise I will be in trouble. As soon as I finished reading the text message, Wen Yu An came out of the room with a very calm face. Found the refrigerator, took a bottle of water, and sat next to me to check my phone. I didn't see you before the divorce, but when Lin Zongheng called, you didn't ask why it started after the divorce. I don't want me, I didn't answer my phone. I added the topic of Wen Yu An, turned around and pretended to be very angry and looked at Wen Yu An. Wen Yu An, if you dare to go to the bar to drink next time, I will definitely Han Qian, I'm hungry. Wen Yu An seemed to deliberately avoid the topic of drinking, and even took the phone and blocked Lin Zongheng in front of me, then jumped up and went to the bathroom to wash. Looking at Wen Yu An's back, I was very surprised. Why did she start living with Wen Yu An again just a few days after the divorce? But it was different from the feeling before the divorce. Forget it, I can't figure it out for a while anyway, so I got up and went to the kitchen to make breakfast. In the middle of the conversation, I also relayed the content of my mother-in-law's text message saying that mom and dad went out for a trip and took the keys to the house with them. Han wants you to stay here if you don't mind. Before I finished speaking, Wen Yu An's urging voice came from the bathroom. I don't mind. It's not like we haven't lived together before. Han Kaiya, Arya, I'm going to be late for work. Hearing this arrogant remark, the muscles at the corners of my mouth twitched constantly. What's the big deal? They're divorced and have a debt of 4 million. Why are they living together again? I took a deep breath and swore in my heart that I must resist. Then I urged Wen Yu An to wash up quickly and told him that I would go out to find a job later. But when Yu An asked me directly if I couldn't go to work, saying that she wanted to support me, I was speechless and replied, and then asked me to watch my ex-wife and my old love lingering. Even if we agreed to divorce, I should have some dignity as a man. Old love, you are talking about Lin Zongheng Tan Qian. Are you jealous? When Yu An had a smirk on her face, I simply ignored her and made my breakfast peacefully. But ignoring her made Wen Yu An even more curious. She ran to me and kept asking Han Qian, if you just say you are jealous, I will not choose General Manager Lin and I am jealous of me. But what is even more unfortunate now is that I have to continue to take care of you. It is your honor. Yang Qian, you don't know that many people approached me last night. You can see my angry eyes. When Yu An just changed the subject and let's eat. I am almost starving. At this time, I found out something very important. After the divorce, the way we get along has changed. I am no longer respectful and warm to Wen Yu An. Yes, I don't want to keep warm to someone, but no matter what, the 4 million you on that Wen Yu An owes must be paid back. After breakfast, I took the bus to work. On the way, I even called my mother-in-law to ask when the teacher will be back. The pregnant woman's voice came from the other side. Han Qian, your mother is swimming now in Sanya. I heard from the other side of the phone that my mother said that my ancestral daughter Yaya will go well. It is obvious that my grandmother does not want Wen Yu An to go back. But I dare not really send Wen Yu An back. I have to give face to the two elders and Wen Yu An. After all, divorce is more important. Thinking about Wen Yu An, I feel that life is even darker. Think about it. There is a female CIO with mysophobia in the company, and the room at home is messy, no different from a pig pen. Don't say much. It's all messy. Now I have to hurry to buy vegetables and buy her a quilt and new toiletries. In the luxurious villa on the other side, after all, they are already playing Mahjong. Old Wen, who came down from the table with a worried look, frowned and sighed. Wife, do you think we are lying like this? Don't worry about whether our daughter will suffer. I know the character of Han Qian. I'll tell you secretly, Han Qian actually smokes, but for the little ungrateful wolf, she hasn't smoked for 3 years. Do you think the little ungrateful wolf will be in trouble? In fact, Legion he had called when Nguyen a long time ago, and as long as he admitted his mistake, he could take the key and go home. But when Nguyen hung up the phone without saying a word, which obviously meant that she didn't want to go home. 1 hour later, I went home after buying things and made the bedding for the second bedroom. I wanted to lie down undressed for a while, but I didn't expect to fall asleep directly. When I woke up, I found that it was dark outside. I opened the door and found that when New Anne returned, she was sitting on the sofa with potato chips and watching TV. There was also a bag of pajamas she had just bought next to her. After seeing me, she put down the potato chips, looked up and shouted, Han Qian, I'm hungry. I took a deep breath and asked, are you going to live here permanently? When Nguyen nodded vigorously without hesitation, I can pay for food and rent. Han Qian, I was abandoned. I called my mother, but she didn't answer and sent me a text message to scold me. I looked incredulous and asked him to show me the text message. But when New Ann said that he deleted the text message and asked me if I wanted to check her phone, I couldn't help but smile helplessly and turned around to go cook. But then my cell phone suddenly rang and I quickly answered the call. It turned out that I was selected by Honor Group and asked to go for an interview tomorrow. I excitedly said that I would arrive on time tomorrow. A bright smile appeared on my face and excitement flashed in my eyes. Finally, it was a good start. I have been living like a year in the past 2 days. I am burdened by a debt of 4 million yuan, and I have some difficulty breathing. I have also never heard back from my resumes. This call is like a ray of light in the darkness, dispelling the haze of the past few days. For this reason, I specially made a few more dishes for Wen Yu An, and after the meal, I was very interested in inviting Wen Yu An to go out for a walk. Early the next morning, I squeezed on the bus and staggered all the way to the Honor headquarters. Looking at the more than 10-story high-rise building, I was a little confused. It was time to go to work, but why was there no one outside the square? Also, why is there a sign saying, "Watch out for vehicles on the left and right"? It should be in the wrong place. Just as I took a deep breath and prepared to go for the interview, a red car brushed my nose directly, scaring me so much that I took a breath of cold air, turned pale, stood there motionless, and felt a cold sweat running down my spine. When I came to my senses, a woman got out of a car not far away. She was tall, with a willow-like waist, and her black and shiny hair was smooth like a waterfall, which made her look charming. But in my eyes, this woman was the murderer who almost killed me. Before I could go forward to argue, he trotted all the way and disappeared in front of the Honor Group. My face was full of anger, and a resentful voice came out in my heart. Don't let me meet you again, otherwise you will be in trouble. I readjusted my mentality and walked towards the personnel office. Soon I was led to a meeting room, and there were 3 interviewers sitting in front of me, 2 men and 1 woman. Since I worked as a planner in Changxiang Group in my last job and had planned several major projects, the 3 interviewers were very satisfied with me, and the interview was just a formality. The interview was over soon. Just as I was about to leave, I suddenly remembered the scene of being almost hit in the morning, so I turned back and asked a question. Is the red sports car downstairs from your company? As soon as this question came out, the 3 interviewers looked very embarrassed. Miss Han was not injured, right? This car is indeed from your company, but before the interviewer finished speaking, I interrupted directly. Okay, I know he was wearing 8cm high heels and almost drove me to death. When I see him, I want to slap him hard. After saying that, I turned and left, leaving the 3 interviewers looking at each other. In fact, this has long become a tradition of Honor Group, and everyone in the company knows that the company's female president is an old driver who hits people without blinking. Never cross the square around 9 o'clock in the morning, otherwise you may not see the sun the next day. At this time, I was at the elevator door. Thinking about the scene in the morning, I still felt scared. I was almost hit by a car this morning. With a ding, the elevator door opened. I walked into the elevator in a panic, but as soon as I took a step, I felt a softness in my chest. Before I could see what it was, I was punched hard. Then I heard a sharp curse in my ear saying that you were taking advantage of me and you were looking for death. As soon as he finished speaking, he grabbed my hair. I was immediately furious. I was punched and my hair was grabbed. At this time, I didn't care about being a gentleman. I reached out and grabbed the woman's hair. Then I heard the woman scream. Then the woman stepped on my foot with her high heels. I felt a piercing pain in my foot and couldn't help but wail. At this time, I finally saw the person in front of me clearly. This was the woman who almost hit me to death, but this time her hair was disheveled and she looked much more embarrassed than this morning. Oh, which department are you from? I will fire you now. As I was talking, the woman's hands got stronger, but I showed no mercy. I tore the woman's hair hard and gritted my teeth and said angrily, I'm not from your company yet. You almost killed me downstairs just now. I was worried that I had nowhere to find you. Soon, the chaos attracted onlookers from the surroundings, and the three people in charge of the interview also hurried over. Because the two voices were familiar, I ran up and grabbed the two people. Han Qian, let go quickly, and President Yan, let go too. The employees are all watching. Han Qian, let go first. President Yan is a girl. I frowned and let go, but unexpectedly, the woman not only did not let go, but opened her mouth to bite me. Fortunately, she was stopped by others, and it took a lot of persuasion to let President Yan let go. We both glared at Yan King in embarrassment and bent over to hit me with a shoe. The HR manager hurriedly hugged her tightly, then motioned for me to leave quickly, saying that he would call me later to apologize on behalf of President Yan. I snorted coldly and entered the elevator, speechless about what happened today. Not only was I almost killed, but even the job I had in hand was ruined. It was really unlucky. At the same time, in the office of Glory Group, Yan King was tidying her hair and whispered to Manager Song, do you know that boy, mister? Bia, he came for an interview today. He was almost killed by you downstairs just now. I seem to have some impression of him. I feel upset when I see handsome guys recently. I can only look at him, but not eat him. If I don't say I'm dead, why keep him? Tell him to come to work tomorrow. He dared to grab my hair and take advantage of me. I'll play with you until I'm dead. You won't scream. Yan King received a text message of acceptance as soon as I left the company, telling me that I could go to work tomorrow. I suddenly stopped, stunned, staring at the text message on my mobile phone, unable to believe it was true. It took a long time for me to come back to my senses, but I always felt that this was a trap, but I couldn't refuse, because only here can I have the opportunity to display my talents and pay off the 4 million debt within a year. Then he called his mother, who was far away in the countryside, to ask how the crops were doing at home and whether the money had been received. My mother and mother-in-law are two extremes. My mother has a gentle personality and never speaks loudly, while my mother-in-law is a young woman and never speaks. My God, you don't earn much and you keep some money at home. I don't have much to spend and I've saved all the money for you. Ma, don't worry, I had more than 10 dishes with my clients today. Your health is not good and you can't lack nutrition anymore. In this day and age, being hospitalized due to malnutrition is embarrassing for a son. You will tell the old man to buy some cards in a while. Got it, go get busy. After a few minutes, my mother began to feel sorry for the phone bill and was very reluctant, but she still hung up the phone. Until now, she didn't know how much she spent on the last hospitalization. The old man cheated him and spent several thousand. But this made my mother nag about it for a long time every day, and she was almost angry to go back to the hospital. After I hung up the phone, I took a deep breath and set a few small goals for myself. First, I would pay off Wei Mu An's debt within a year, and then make money to buy a pension insurance for my parents next year. If there's any extra money, I would buy myself a commuter car worth about 10,000 yuan. A second-hand Xiaoli would be fine. Just as I was looking forward to a better future, at the same time on the other side, my ex-wife's childhood sweetheart Lin Zongheng had already boarded the plane back to China. He couldn't wait any longer because until now, he couldn't believe that he would be blocked by Wenyu An. He felt that it must be that Han Qian who instigated the discord, so he had to return to China to deal with it quickly. Otherwise, the plan of more than 10 years would be in vain. The beautiful CEO and I fought each other for more than 10 minutes, but the beautiful CEO not only did not fire me, but even gave me 3 times the salary and a bonus of 400,000 yuan and begged me to stay and help him. It was because I was almost hit by a car at the door of the company on the day of the interview. After the interview, I learned that the beautiful CEO Yan King was the murderer who almost hit me to death. So I fought twice in front of tens of thousands of people in the company for more than 10 minutes until the HR manager came out to mediate and the farce ended. I thought this job was going to fail, but as soon as I walked out of the company, I received an acceptance text message asking me to go to work tomorrow. The next morning, I hurriedly finished my meal and went to the new company. When I arrived at the company again, I learned to be smart and didn't cross the square. The scene of being almost hit to death by that woman yesterday was still vivid in my mind, and finally I was safe. After entering the company gate, the girl at the front desk signed the contract for me and then smiled and welcomed me to join. But just when I was about to respond with a smile, a cold voice came from behind. Are you so idle? Don't know what to do. Just go to clean the toilet. I turned around and saw Yan King scolding the employees. This woman must be in menopause. She was scolding people early in the morning. Adhering to the principle of staying away from her, I will just walk around her in the future, so I turned and left. But as soon as I took a step, he grabbed my arm, snatched the contract from my hand, and took a look at it. Then he yelled at the girl at the front desk, who told you that Han Qian went to the planning department. How many times have I told you that Han Qian reported to the general department? At this time, Yan King was on the verge of exploding because a piece of crust was recently tendered and who would suffer loss, and the planning department couldn't come up with a good plan. Now the HR department has arranged Han Qian to the planning department. Isn't this deliberately making things difficult for him? I was too lazy to pay attention to that woman. The general department and the planning department treated me the same. Anyway, gold will shine wherever it is. After arriving at the general department, I found a workstation and sat down. Everyone in the department was very leisurely, and there was basically nothing to do. Some were watching movies, some were playing games, so I didn't feel comfortable. I don't deserve to enjoy these now because I still owe my ex-wife Wenyu An for million in debt. At the same time, in the president's office on the other side, Yan King threw a document on the ground with anger on his face. Gnashing his teeth and cursing, the planning department has a bunch of rubbish. This is the plan they gave. When such a plan is taken out for bidding, it will definitely be played to death by Cheng Xiang. Yan King rubbed her head, sighed deeply, and then made a phone call. After the call, she was even more upset. Chang Xiang Group had solved the problem. There are only 2 large real estate companies in the city. Now Chang Xiang can't do it, so they can only be the Glory Group to be the scapegoat. After hanging up the phone, King felt a sense of powerlessness in her heart. Her eyes lost their previous sharpness and looked dim and tired, as if she was lost in the fog and couldn't find the direction. Suddenly, Han King's resume on the desk caught his eye. The awesome planning experience in it gave her a glimmer of hope, so she asked the assistant to call Han King to the office. When the assistant came to me and said that President Yan had something to talk to me about, everyone in the department looked at me with pity. After all, the scene of Yan King and I fighting in front of so many people yesterday was already known to everyone in the company. The corner of my eye twitched. I never expected that revenge would come so quickly. I was prepared in advance. No matter how King embarrasses me later, I must bear it. After all, this is my only chance. I sighed softly and a smile appeared on the wall. I walked towards King's office, knocked on the door of the office, and after hearing Yan King's response from inside, I pushed the door carefully. At this time, King lay on the table weakly, staring at me with despair. I'll be frank with you. Yesterday you pulled my hair. Originally, I recruited you to torture you, but now I have a problem. I can't ripple your salary. 10 Kayan, help me. King looked at me expectantly. At this time, she had no choice. Her eyes were full of grievances and unwillingness. I was slightly stunned. Is this still the arrogant and beautiful CEO before? I was ready to endure humiliation before coming here, but I never expected to become King's life-saving straw. Then he looked down at the documents on the table, guessed it in his heart, took a deep breath, and asked softly, "Do you trust me so much? I can't think of anyone else except you." The planning department and the project department tried their best, but the plan was as bad as shit. I had no way out. Seeing that I was still hesitating, Yan King said that if I could make a plan within 2 days and the company would not lose money, she would be willing to pay me a bonus of 400,000. I really needed money, so I agreed directly for the huge bonus. For the next afternoon, I studied a lot of documents and soon it was time to get off work. When I was about to work overtime, I suddenly received a call from my ex-wife Wen Ann saying that she was starving to death and asked me to go home and cook for her. At this time, I remembered that there were still mouths waiting for food at home. 3 years of habit made me choose to go home. Anyway, I could study the documents at home. Then I squeezed on the bus to go home. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Wen Ann sitting on the sofa eating potato chips. There was a black line in my head. How could it be like I was starving to death? When New Ann saw me coming back, she quickly put away the potato chips and then shouted that she was hungry. She also threatened to call my mother and say that I abused her. I took a deep breath. It was a busy first day at work and I was not used to it yet. "You should not call my mother. If she knew that I was divorced, you should be fine, but I might die. Don't starve to death." "I'm starving to death. I bought the vegetables in the kitchen. Go quickly. If you don't go, I will tell my mother that you filed for divorce." When New and did not change her words and called her aunt, and I didn't take it too hard. I looked at the kitchen and prepared to start cooking. Looking at the vegetables on the cupboard, I couldn't help but grin. I bought all the vegetables I like. I don't know if Wen Yuan bought them intentionally or unintentionally. After a warm dinner, I went back to the room to study the plan until 4 o'clock in the morning. So I got up in the morning with two dark circles under my eyes. I saw it was already 9 o'clock in the morning. I was so scared that I quickly picked up the documents and ran away. I even took a taxi to the company today, but I was still late. The worst thing is that when I walked into the company, I saw Yin King looking at me with a sullen face. I looked desperate. I was late the next day after I arrived at the company, and I was caught on the spot by the female president. But when King glanced at the documents in my hand and glanced at my dark circles, her face was much relieved. "I read the documents until very late last night. I hope to see your results the day after tomorrow morning." After that, she turned and went back to the office. I immediately returned to my workstation and buried my head in writing the plan. In the blink of an eye, it was time to get off work again, but I still had some things to do, so I sent a text message to Wen Ann. But she said that I had to work overtime for 1 hour in the evening and would go back later to make food for her. When Ann sent a text message to ask me to go back early. He was a little uncomfortable now, but I didn't care. I thought he was coaxing me again, so I continued to bury my head in the work in my hands. I don't know how long it took. When I felt that my waist couldn't bear it, I picked up my phone and looked at it. As a result, I saw 6 missed calls on it, one of which was from my mother, and the other 5 were from Wen Ann. I was confused. My mother had an old man with her. Usually it was the old man who called me when something happened. And if Wen Ann had nothing to do, she would not have called me 5 times in a row. I quickly called Wen Ann back, but no one answered the 2 calls in a row. At this time, I was really anxious. I remember that 2 years ago, a pervert suddenly broke into my house. Fortunately, I was at home at that time. The scars on my arm were left when I fought with the gangster at that time. The more I thought about it, the more scared I became. I called my mother while running. I thought Wen Ann called my mother later, but my mother just asked me when I would go home for the new year. At this time, I was full of anxiety and self-blame. Wen Ann must have had an accident. Why should I work overtime at the company? It would be the same if I went back to work. And when Ann called me 5 times, why didn't I answer any of them? She must not have any accident. Otherwise, I will never forgive myself in this life. I ran home while constantly calling Wen Anne, praying in my heart that she would not have any accident. The beautiful CEO who just got divorced was curled up on the sofa at this moment. Her face was flushed, her eyes were closed tightly, and she was muttering to herself, Han Qian, come back and save me. I whiffed myself in the heavy rain while anxiously calling my ex-wife. My heart was full of anxiety and self-blame. When New Anne answered the phone quickly, you must be fine, I will be home soon. At this moment, I really hoped that the call would be connected, but the desperate voice came from the phone again. The number you dialed is temporarily unanswered. Please call again later. My body trembled, my hands clenched into fists, and I was almost drowned by a strong sense of guilt. When I thought about such a good girl, if something really happened, I really wanted to die to apologize. I rushed home like crazy and finally ran all the way to the residential area where I lived. But it was raining all night, and I found that the elevators were all out of service for maintenance. I had no choice but to run all the way to the top floor, trembling to open the door. The lights in the living room were off, and there was no sign of fighting. But the more I thought about it, the more panicked I became. I ran to Wen Anne's room without thinking, but I didn't see the figure I had been thinking about. Suddenly, I felt an unprecedented fear in my heart. My body couldn't stop shaking and my fingers were cold. At this time, there was only one terrible thought in my mind. Wen Anne must have had an accident. The first thing to do was to call the police. I took a few deep breaths and forced myself to suppress the uneasiness in my heart. Just as I was about to call the police, I suddenly found Wen Anne curled up on the sofa, frowning and closing her eyes. I breathed a sigh of relief, and my shoulders relaxed. I slowly smiled and then said weakly, why don't you turn on the lights at home? I called you, but you didn't answer. I waited for a while, and he was gone, lying motionless. I smiled helplessly and walked forward to carry her to the bed. But when my hand touched Wen Anne's body, I panicked again, because when Anne's body was hot, she must have a high fever. So I didn't dare to delay for a moment, and ran all the way with Wen Anne in my arms. When I walked out of the unit door, I found that it was raining outside. Since the rented house did not provide a parking space, the car could only be parked on the road. At this time, I was as anxious as an ant on a hot. On the one hand, I was afraid that Wen Anne's condition would be aggravated by Lin Yu, and on the other hand, I was afraid that Wen Anne's treatment would be delayed. So I took off my coat and lay on Wen Anne. On the way to the hospital, Wen Anne was just a little wet and had a fever, but I was soaked. Looking at Wen Anne lying weak on the bed, I felt heartbroken and regretful. Thinking of the message from Wen Anne when I was at work, I thought, can I stop myself? She said she was not feeling well, but I didn't take it seriously. Until the doctor said that it was not serious and she would be fine after hanging an IV. Only then did my heart fall down. The doctor gave a few instructions and left, and asked me to go back and change clothes. I could ask the nurse to watch here, but I shook my head and politely refused, because I just wanted to be with her at this moment, and I would feel relieved when I saw that she was fine. Looking at her sleeping figure, I quietly walked out of the ward and called my mother-in-law Li Jin-hee. Han Kayan, why did you call me so late? Is Wen Anne's little ungrateful wolf starting to make trouble again? It's good without Wen Anne. I didn't take good care of her. Wen Anne has a fever and is in the hospital. Do you need me to go there? No, it's just that I didn't take good care of Wen Anne. I should call you. It's good that she's fine. If there's anything, call me. Li Jin-hee was relieved to hear that it was just an ordinary fever. After I hung up the phone, I remembered that Wen Anne hadn't eaten dinner yet, so I went to the hospital restaurant to buy some porridge and side dishes. When I opened the ward again, Wen Anne had woken up. She looked around with wide eyes in confusion. When she saw me coming, she turned her head away directly, as if she was angry with me for not going back earlier. I smiled helplessly and put the porridge on the table. Wen Anne looked at the fragrant millet porridge, but her temper still couldn't overcome her appetite. She was drinking the porridge in small sips. At this time, I tilted my head and looked at Wen Anne. I was confused. What is the relationship between me and Wen Anne now? We had just divorced, but our relationship was worse than when we were married and worse than that of lovers. And when I saw Wen Anne was sick, I was really going crazy, and I didn't feel relieved until I was fine. Just when I was in a daze, when New Anne suddenly broke the silence. "Handan, I'm going to sleep. Please turn off the light for me." I turned off the light in the ward. I don't know how long it took. I kept staring at the ceiling in a daze. My brain was full of thoughts, thinking about every little thing about New Anne and also thinking about the planning case. Suddenly, a cell phone ring interrupted my thoughts. It was New Anne's call, but seeing that it was an unfamiliar number, I hung up the phone directly. Just when I wanted to set the phone to silent, the next second the call came again. Looking at the sleeping New Anne, I pressed the answer button and whispered that New Anne had fallen asleep and it was inconvenient to answer the phone. The other party was silent for a long time. Just when I was about to hang up the phone, an angry roar came from the other side. "Who are you? Why are you holding New Anne's phone at this time? You are Han Kaiyun. Yes, New Anne is asleep. Is there anything wrong?" When the other party called out New Anne, I knew that the other party was New Anne's childhood sweetheart Lin Song Heng, who had changed his number after being blocked by New Anne. And just when I admitted that it was Kian, the other party burst out on the spot. "Han Kayan, you fucking stay away from New Anne." I was too lazy to pay attention to this person and hung up the phone directly. But just as I was about to get up and leave, Lin Zhang kept calling New Anne like a madman. I was afraid of affecting New Anne's rest, so I hung up the phone again. Without waiting for me to speak, Lin Zhang directly scolded Han Qian, "Don't let me catch you. I will make you live a life worse than death." "Lin Zhang, I beg you, I fucking beg you to catch me." I hung up the phone again and took several deep breaths in a row to release my anger. I don't know why, but when I heard the three words Lin Zhongheng, I couldn't control my anger. Especially when Lin Zhongheng called out the three words, Xiao Nu, and affectionately, I was so jealous that I wanted to crush the phone. It was not until New Anne's voice reached my ears that I calmed down. There's a button on the left side of Han Kaiyun, and you can turn off the phone by pressing it for a long time. It turns out that New Anne has not fallen asleep all the time, and the whole person is in a daze. He knows everything that happened just now. I didn't turn off the phone, but handed the phone to New Anne. New Anne took the phone and turned it off directly, then threw it aside, turned his head and looked at me. "Han Kiam, can you accompany me to go shopping tomorrow? I haven't gone shopping for several years." The last time I went shopping was when Lin Zhongheng didn't go abroad. He had already returned to China and asked me to have dinner at his house tomorrow, but I didn't want to go. "I want to go shopping with you." "Okay, no problem." I didn't hesitate at all, didn't resist at all, only a good word. At this time, there was a smile on my face because between Lin Zhongheng and me, when Nguyen finally chose me. But I forgot that tomorrow is the last time for me to teach the planning case, which is related to the survival of the company.